Hello and welcome to a new thing I want to try out on the channel. It is a very well-known format since many people have done it, so I decided to try it out for myself. The point of this series is to review the gameplay of levels and give tips whenever I can. This is most likely going to be very similar to Jakob Nugget's legit level review, but way worse. Also, if Jakob somehow finds out and is not happy about me doing these, well, fuck off, you massive p-. Yeah, I'm obviously joking. Just tell me and I won't do any more. Back to the topic of this video. Today I'm planning on reviewing the gameplay of Niflheim by Vismo. I'm going to go over each part of the level, and if I'm not lazy I'll figure out a way to have timestamps in the video. And with that said, let's get into it. The level begins with a slow and nice cube section. I think this beginning is quite good because it doesn't feature any weird or hard gameplay right from the start, making the level a bit easier to get into. I want to point out that most of the timings in the cube need to be done late, such as the clicks on 2 and 3%. If you click too early, you're just about destined to slam yourself into a block and die. There is a weird bug with the click on 5% which makes you jump into another dimension, leading to an annoying confusing death. Speaking of confusing deaths, you need to be very careful with the 3 blue orbs at 6% because for whatever reason Vismo decided to put them in such a way that will kill you if you click them too early. Besides from these small technicalities, the first cube of the level is the fun and easy to learn part, hence I've decided to give it a 7 out of 10. The gameplay is a bit unusual and makes the part more fun to play, because you feel like a know-it-all cheaty physics badass. I don't really have anything to say about the ship part that follows the cube. It's not hard and the gameplay is not difficult. The pace picks up and so does the difficulty, yet the level still feels well intact. If I had to be very picky about it, I would say that the transition from the cube to the ship lacks visibility. It's not the scariest thing in the world, but it feels kind of weird when you start playing the level. The gameplay itself is relatively fun, mainly due to its simplicity and the fact that most of the decoration is fairly visible. The only thing that is not very certain from when you start playing the level, or at least not for me because I'm often mentally challenged by the simplest of tasks, are the bluish laser beams. I was very delighted to learn that you can die from them after maybe 3 or 4 days after starting to play the level, but you know, the more you know the better your consistency can be. The overall score I would give this part is the same as the last one, a solid 7 out of 10. This is where things start to get downright bad. Don't get me wrong, I really like this part, but there are several places that make me wish they never existed. Before I start whipping them with my bad opinion though, let's look at the beginning of the part. I think that the transition this time is done quite well. You can see where you're going and you can also see what is waiting on the other side, making it fairly easy to get used to. However, there is one massive problem with the entire 15 to 30% section. Why the fuck are portals replaced by words? This is confusing as hell, especially considering the majority of players that are likely to attempt this level are just getting into the torturous monotony of grinding extremes, or in other words, they're noobs. I secretly believe that Vismo was on some sort of strong and long-lasting asset to make such a bad decision. I can almost envision him giggling his ass off while making all of the portals invisible and putting on some words where they're supposed to be, but enough about that. Let's actually talk about the gameplay. The gameplay in this part is not bad, I like it, it's kinda fun. The first bow is more or less free and besides a few blind spots that almost ruin it, it's pretty enjoyable. There are honestly 2 places that are a bit weird because they're the shittiest form of timing gameplay. However, with the first one there is very interesting trick I found. The first one of these timings is in fact the very first click of the part. It's quite obvious that if you click too early you're going to die, so what you can do to avoid clicking too early is to click exactly when the bow passes the antenna-like looking thing. Now we've gone over the good bit of the part, I want to just explain to you how painful the rest of it is. There is a small waiting time on the clicks on 25% at 27 through 29. I don't really like to share this too often, but I fucking hate timings like that. I don't know why, but it might be because they purely rely on your sense for the game. They don't rely on any kind of flow or sync, they're just there. And you have to count down the time when you have to click. I might be just calling myself bad at the game, but I don't think everyone has the ability to click exactly 1.5409 seconds after they've landed on the platform and do another 3 or 4 clicks in a very different but just as precise time measure. Overall the part is shit. The main reason being is everything after the first bow and the way you have to wait for every click for a long ass period of time. I'll give this part a 5 out of 10 only because the first bow carries the whole thing. I fucking love that section and I can't really hide it. Now we get to the wave of 30%. The gameplay is the sort of gameplay you would find if you were to type wave challenge in the search bar. There are some cool ideas, especially with the spiky structures that are the base of the gameplay. It looks quite interesting and is very simple to see and understand. As long as you're at the very least decent with the wave game mode, you should be able to pass this part on the first attempt when you reach it for the first time in normal mode. The UFO in the second half of the part is pretty much the same. Some generic but somewhat fun gameplay that is very easy to understand and side read. The only thing to be cautious about are the pink orbs and the 3 clicks at the end of the UFO. If I were to give you advice on how to do them, I would recommend you to do the first 2 clicks fast and then delay the last one so you can perfectly jump over the last saw of the part. Overall, I would give this part a solid 7 out of 10 because of its simplicity and fluke ability, which make it very fun to play. 40-51 is the most satisfying garbage I've seen in my life. It's truly amazing how I can get a boner from beating such a bad part. There are some very weird timings like the yellow orb at 42%. It's such a weird timing that you can't really get consistent at it, but at some point you get the feel of it and it will be even weirder because you will start to realize that this timing is actually quite easy. My point is to try and not really think about strategy to pass it because it will only lead to a failure, as the one thing that matters the most when going through that gap after the yellow orb is when you land on the platform before that. The problem is that the position on that platform changes every single attempt, so you just have to trust yourself with it. Everything else up to the do is just some easy memorization with even easier timings, so it shouldn't cause you any problems. The do itself is not that hard. It has some uncommon gameplay which can be somewhat hard to get used to, but once you get the click pattern down it's basically free and it's very satisfying. There aren't any weird timings there, so again it shouldn't be that much of a problem to pass. So in conclusion, I give this part a 4.5 out of 10 because it's some hot garbage due to the 42 yellow% orb and how weird the duo is. Well, what do you have there? The most famous part of the level with the blinding poses and fast switching game modes, or in other words my favorite part of the level. It's fucking great honestly. The drop got me like Ukraine on the 2021 Eurovision. It's a fucking banger. I admit that the fast changing gameplay and the presence of words instead of portals might be a bit off-putting for some. Might as well not talk about how a person with epilepsy might have a life-threatening seizure. But for me it works great. The problem with this part is the learning process. This part takes approximately 30% of the level and it's a lot of fast-paced, fast transition gameplay which can be really annoying to learn. But trust me, once you know how to do it, it becomes easily the best and most consistent part of the level. Speaking of consistency, let me tell you some stuff that you can do to make sure to improve yours in the part. First, make sure that you do the second robot jump of 57% very late. This way you won't throw yourself into spikes and when you become a ship, and you will be able to continue on with the level. Also for the ship, make sure that you hold down the mouse button as you pass through the teleportation/UFO portal. If you do this, the UFO will do an automatic jump and you won't have to bother with a very precise click that might cost you a good run. Another tip is to just go for the coin when you reach the ship duel because it's the easiest route. Lastly, make sure that when you leave the mini ship at 67% you hit the top of the platform. Don't hold down the button there, but just go a slight bit up so you can hit the platform. I'm not really sure what happens if you don't do that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But I know that it's way more consistent than just flying through the middle. I think it might be because you might accidentally make another input that will make you jump higher than you're supposed to be. Overall, I'll give this part a 9 out of 10 just because it's very satisfying and consistent as well as fun. However, I must point out that the dual wave spam at around 70% is really difficult and straight up unnecessary. From 84% onwards we have the last part of the level. It kinda gives the idea of a cyclical structure because the level started nice and slow and finished the same way, but who am I to talk? I've only got a grade 6, or a B for our American viewers out there, so my English is not that good. Nevertheless, the end is alright. I can only advise you to properly practice it because some of the timings are really bad and inconsistent, meaning that it can really fuck you up. Other than that, the part is easy and I would give it a 6 out of 10 because it's kinda bad. But seriously, the reason is that there are some really bad timings and the gameplay is not very suiting for an ending of a level, especially one like Niflheim. With all of that said, the overall gameplay score of Niflheim is 6.5. The level is alright, at most, due to the many bad timings, some bugs and overall lack of enjoyment. In fact, the only reason this thing got that high of a score is because of the drop that carried all of it. And that's it for this episode of Copying Woozy and Jakob Nuggets. If you liked it, then that's nice. I'm happy I was somewhat entertaining, and if you want more of these, tell me. It was kind of fun making this, even though I delayed it about 2 weeks due to exams and laziness. But yeah, consider subscribing and liking if you enjoyed, and make sure to stay mad. See ya.